Staying lean was always hard until I understood the concept that I'm going to be explaining in this video. So all throughout my life, I used to be skinny fat. I was always out of shape. I played some sports here and there, but I really didn't play them enough to get a good physique out of them. And my diet wasn't amazing at all. I ate junk food all the time, and I basically just didn't have any care for my body and how healthy I was. So that led to me getting a skinny fat physique that really affected my confidence and how I saw myself, how I was able to present myself to other people. I really had no self-esteem and I just hated the way I looked. So from that point, ever since discovering fitness, I always wanted to build a aesthetic physique. And by that I meant getting enough muscle mass and then just getting really shredded so that I looked like all these influencers online and like a superhero. And what I started realizing was that when I was bulking up and getting bigger and putting on all this muscle mass, I still really wasn't quite happy with how I looked. So I tried my first cut. And what happened with my first cut was that I basically took things to the extreme and crash dieted really hard. And while I got a lot leaner, I also lost a lot of muscle in that process. And I didn't have much muscle at that point in the first place. So I got pretty skinny. But on top of that, I didn't even get as lean as I wanted, and I couldn't stay there because I had gotten to that point in a way that I couldn't actually stick to. And I didn't really learn the fundamentals about eating and nutrition and dieting. So I kind of just rebounded back to where I was, and I just ended up going back into a bulk. Now, the concept I'm going to be talking about in this video that really helped me understand how to finally get lean and actually stay there was exactly that. Understanding that getting lean once, for example, like a bodybuilding show, getting really shredded for one day, and staying lean and actually being able to sustainably eat the diet and stay at that body weight and stay at that body fat percentage long term, those two things are very different. And I want to explain the differences because when I first started, I thought that taking that really extreme route would give me the results I wanted and basically make me have my dream physique and I would be happy. But what ended up happening is when I got to that point, first of all, I was underwhelmed because I did things wrong. But second of all, because I got there in a way that wasn't sustainable, I couldn't actually keep what I had worked hard on. You gotta realize that in our modern world, honestly, eating at maintenance is still a diet because we're so used to eating all this junk food and all this food that's really high calorie and lower volume. So you could just eat a shit ton of food, not feel full, and consume way over your calories. So the second you go from not putting restrictions on your diet to going to maintenance even, that's a challenge in it itself. You need to make sure that you're eating around that same calorie level every day. And for a lot of people, that level of calories is still difficult to maintain because our appetites are so jacked up. We need the dopamine. We want to eat all these high calorie, tasty foods. And if you can't even go to maintenance and stay there, how do you expect to go into a diet and then maintain an even lower body fat percentage when you know it's going to be more difficult than when you're doing now? So what I actually recommend doing, and what I did in order to finally get to that lower body fat percentage and stay there, was I really understood where I was at in terms of my maintenance, and I challenged myself to just stay there for a couple weeks. And from doing that, I was able to really understand what I needed to do to accomplish my goal. So when you do a couple weeks at maintenance, you start to understand how your hunger levels should feel naturally if you're trying to maintain that body weight. And from there, since you know exactly what your maintenance is, you can go into a really accurate calorie deficit and slowly lose weight. And then every time you plateau, you could obviously increase the deficit or increase your cardio. And why this is so beneficial is that a lot of people, when they take the extreme route, they'll take their calories way too low because they don't actually know what their maintenance is and they're kind of just guessing and they want to make sure they're in the deficit. And there's also other people that because they overestimated their maintenance so much that when they think they're in a deficit, they're actually not, and they're not losing weight and they don't know why. They think they're in a deficit. If you really dial in your maintenance and you feel comfortable at that level, then dieting slowly from that point is going to be way easier for you because you already feel sustained where you're at and you can slowly cut off from there and your body will adapt as you go and you'll really understand the minimum amount of a deficit you need to be in to actually get results instead of taking the extreme route and not even knowing if you can actually stick to that diet. If you want to stay lean, it's a lot different than prepping for a bodybuilding show because when you're prepping, you're tapering off your calories and increasing your cardio like pretty often, and you're getting to a point where your calories are so low before your competition and your cardio is ramped up that you could never sustain that long term because it's so difficult. And obviously it gives you that result, but it only gives you that result for like a day. If you watch any bodybuilder right after their show, a lot of them go into a binge for multiple days and they'll eat a bunch of junk food and just anything they're craving, and they can't stop themselves because their body is literally in starvation mode. So you want to avoid that at all costs if you're trying to stay lean. You need to get there in a way that almost doesn't feel that difficult. It should feel pretty easy to get to that body weight and that body fat percentage. And then from there, if you want to go even further and it starts feeling difficult, then I would also recommend you go back up to maintenance for a bit, learn your new body weight, see how you feel, try to get to a diet that you can sustain at that new body weight, and then from there go back into a cut again. But in order to actually do this, you need the right mindset to be able to not get impatient and not take extreme measures. That's why it's good to not have a time frame on this goal. You should take your time and really focus on what actually matters, which is forming a diet that you can stick to and that feels easy. And that's why I recommend simplifying your diet as much as you can. And I talk about all this in my shred maxing protocol. It's the first thing in the description, and it's really going to go over exactly how to make your diet simple and efficient, and it's really going to get you the results you want. It explains exactly how I go into a cut and how I make a diet that I can actually enjoy and get really lean on. But on to my next point, another reason why staying lean is so difficult and was so difficult before I understood this next concept is that the other side of the equation from dieting is your calorie expenditure, right? So how much energy you're expending during the day doing activities. And the reason this is so important is that when you're in a deficit, you're obviously taking calories away from your diet. So you're eating less and less. And you get to a point where you're basically starving, you're always hungry. And if you use that other part of the equation, which is your calorie expenditure, it helps so much in being able to eat a little bit more, feel a little bit more sustained. Even the tiniest bit in terms of this will really help you out, because sometimes it's just 200-300 calories that you need to be able to feel a bit more full and make it through another day. And this is why it's really important to avoid being sedentary as much as possible if you're trying to get lean, because it makes the process that much easier. You no longer have to reduce your calories every time you plateau or anytime you stop losing weight. Instead, you could start creating a deficit using calorie expenditure. So doing cardio, playing a sport, doing 10,000 steps, whatever you want to do that's enjoyable and that you can do consistently, that helps tons in terms of getting lean for the first time and staying lean. You'll notice that if you're really deep in a cut and your calories are low, if you were to drop it a little bit more, you would probably get to a point where you either start binging or you just give up on the cutting process. And the only way to combat that would be to, instead of dropping your calories more, which would make it so much harder, you could just start doing a bit more cardio. And it's really common sense, but a lot of people that try to cut, they try to do it without cardio, or they just don't do enough activity during the day. So maybe they work a sedentary job like I do. I have to go do cardio because if I don't, I won't be able to eat enough to feel sustained while still being in a deficit. So it's really important to make sure you're doing something. And obviously it's good for your cardiovascular health to just be doing cardio in the first place. Now, the last concept I want to go over is the concept of keeping your momentum during a diet. So typically I do recommend avoiding cheat meals and cheat days because I find I make the most progress when I'm really focused on my diet and every day I'm eating the same exact thing. Every day I'm in the same deficit. I'm doing the same amount of activity, and it really reduces all the variables to where I know I'm doing everything I need to get the results I want. And at that point, it takes a lot of the stress out of cutting. And if you're doing everything right, obviously you're going to get the result. So it really just makes it a lot easier to stay that way. And I'm a creature of habit. So if I'm eating the same day, even if it's in a deficit, I'll try to stick to that naturally because I just don't like changing. Once you start eating the same thing every day, it kind of becomes routine. So it honestly gets easier. Even though you're getting deeper into a cut, you kind of just get into a routine and it just flows better. But obviously I want you to have a social life as well. And I honestly really prioritize my social life at this age as well. So if you are going to go out to a social event or go out to eat or go out to drink with some friends, what I do is I plan accordingly. So if I know later in the day I'm going to be going out or whatever, I'm going to be eating a lot of calories later in the day, then earlier on in the day, I'll pretty much eat like basically nothing. I'll fast, or I'll eat very little so that I leave myself a lot of room later in the day to be able to actually enjoy myself and not stress about how much I'm going to eat. If you're not doing this as a competitive bodybuilder, there's no point in just stressing and being overly meticulous about every single calorie you eat. I recommend just most of the days of the week, I would say 80 to 90% of the days of the week, try to stay on your diet. Do the best you can to make it a routine so it feels easy for you. Make it simple and easy to follow using my shred maxing protocol. And that 1 or 2 times in the week where you want to have fun or eat a little bit more or eat something tasty, then you can do it as long as you plan ahead and make sure that you'll still be in a deficit or at least be at maintenance for that day. Anyways, guys, I hope this helps you get lean and actually stay lean for the first time. I know that it can be frustrating to get lean and then lose it all, or lose a lot of weight and then rebound again. And that's exactly the thing that happens when you do this incorrectly, and it shouldn't be that way. And I hope the things I explained in this video helps you out. Thanks for watching.